I'm Ariel and I'm here with Skully Designs for our 365-day project. We're on day 6 and we're going to make some receiving blankets. If you don't have babies of your own, eventually you'll have a family member or friend who will. And they make great gifts. One can never have enough receiving blankets. So for this project, you're going to need 2 different coordinating fabrics. These are the ones I picked out. Aren't they fun? You'll also need some pins, scissors, your sewing machine, and a rotary cutter or mat if you need to trim down your fabrics. Now, your fabrics, the size will depend on how large you want your receiving blankets, but you want 10 inches longer on one fabric than the other. So for mine, I made this smaller square, which will be my inside focal point fabric. I made a 32-inch square. For my outside coordinating fabric, I made a 42-inch square. So I'm going to take these and get started. And we are going to, I'm going to whoosh, find the center point of both of the squares. I'm just going to do that by folding them and making sure it's accurate. And I'm going to take my pins and I'm going to mark my center points. And I'm going to do this with both pieces of fabric. So here's my center points. There. Then I am going to take it and fold it the other way so I can get the center point on the other sides. And I'm going to go around both pieces of fabric and I'm going to find all 4 center points on the sides. So, got that one. Get this one, and I don't think I did the other side on the first one. So I'm just going to mark these. We're marking these on both fabrics because we're going to overlay them. And we want to overlay them starting at their center points on each side as we sew them together. So that's why we're marking these points. This is my last one on this fabric, and then I will see if I can show you. So I have a pin there to mark the center point on this side. I have a pin here to mark the center point on this side. Then I have another pin here to mark the center point there, and then one on this side. Hopefully you saw that. Now I'm going to do the same to the other fabric and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, I found the center point for all 4 sides on both pieces of fabric. Now I've laid the smaller fabric, my 32 by 32 square, on top of my larger 42 by 42 square. And I've matched up the center points of the sides here. So both fabrics are centered at the same point. I'm going to pin across there and sew across that line. But I want to mark a 1/4 inch from the end of the top fabric as my stopping point and my starting point. So I don't want that 1/4 inch in each corner to be sewn. I want to be able to stop there. I'm going to do that and then sew across all 3 sides. The 4th side, though, I'm going to leave a gap opening so that I can turn it inside right, since I have them right sides facing each other, sewing it inside out now to hide the seams. So let me do the first one, and then you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. But first, I am going to measure that 1/4 inch on each end here and just make a little square going all the way around. And then, like I said, I'm going to sew the one sides to show you, and you'll kind of get a better idea then, because then we'll do the same for each of the sides, except for the fourth side, where we're going to leave a gap so that we can turn it inside out. And finish it off at that point. So I'm going to go ahead. I've marked 1/4 inch marks on each end here. So I'm going to start a 1/4 inch in, and I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch before my top fabric ends. And I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, let's move to the sewing machine and get that done. All right, I have the one side, my first side, pinned up. I am going to start at this pin point where I've marked. It's a 1/4 inch in from where the top fabric goes in, overlaying the bottom fabric. And this is going to help me miter the corners, which you'll see once we get going. And if you were going to do a different seam allowance, you would start in at that measurement. So if you were doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you would start in a 1/2 inch. We're doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we're leaving a 1/4 inch gap there. So I am going to start there, and I am going to, if I can get it in, be very careful that I start and stop at that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I want to make sure I'm only sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance around. So, there we go. I'm going to bring this down. Sewing the 1/4 inch seam allowance now. You're going to see you'll have the bottom layer of fabric will be hanging. Take this pin out that was measuring my center points. I put them inside the fabric. Right. Once you get the hang of it and know exactly where you're measuring and starting and stopping, this project is super, super simple. And like I said, you can make them any size you want. You just want to make sure your squares are that 10-inch difference. Take these pins out to make this final jaunt a little easier. Now I'm coming up to that 1/4 inch mark at this end here, and I want to stop there. So I don't know if you can see, I have this 1/4 inch difference there. And I didn't bring my scissors over here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to this next side and pin it at the center points again. Pin it, and you'll see as I go to pin it, I'll have a little ear. So I'm still going to start this at that 1/4 inch in, and I'll have the ear. Just ignore that ear for right now, because you're going to have those ears going all the way across. And the ear should be facing in towards your quilt. If it's facing a different direction, you've done something wrong. But we're going to just leave that ear be for right now. We are going to pin up this side and start at that 1/4 inch and just let that ear hang. And we're going to do that all the way around. So let's get those sides sewn up. remember when you do your fourth side, you want to leave a gap so that you can pull it inside out. I'm going to do that, and then we'll be back once the sides are sewn. Okay, I have all my sides sewn, and if you notice in all the corners, I have the little ears, and on my fourth side, I have that opening that I can reach in and turn it inside out later. But now, since we have these ears in all the corners, we want to miter them to get rid of those ears. So what we'll do, we're going to start with this corner first. We're going to kind of form a triangle here and just get it nice and smooth. So it's laid out. Got a nice corner triangle there. We're going to use our cutting mat. It shows different angles if you've ever noticed on your cutting mat. So I'm going to measure 45 degrees angle there, and I'm going to mark it with my pencil at the 45 degree mark, and then I'm going to sew across that line. So let me get this nice and smooth in this corner, and find my 45 degree mark here. I'll line this up, line it up better. Take your time because you don't want to get your measurement wrong. You can mess up your corners. Okay, so I'm going to measure. I'm going to try to measure if I can get it smooth enough. Make sure it's really smooth and line it up. There's the 45 degree line, and I am going to take my ruler and just draw a line across there at the 45 degree mark. So then I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew over that line. And then once we sew it, you'll see it'll end up connecting that 45 degree marks that we made where we started and stopped before, and I'll connect them. So I'm going to sew that, and then we'll be able to clip off that ear once we sew that 45 degree line, and we're going to do that on all four corners. So let me do the first one and show you, and then we'll show you how to finish up your quilt. Alright, I measured my 45 degree angle and I drew a line to mark it, and I sewed across that. And let me show you when I open it up then what it'll kind of look like. So you'll see with your quilt here, it'll be angled up like that, and then you'll be able to just trim that off. And we're going to do that with all four corners. So let me do the rest of the corners. We'll trim them, fold out the quilt, and you'll be able to see how it'll look, and then we'll be able to turn it inside out and just close up our opening with our decorative edge. I have all my corners mitered up, sewn here now. So what I'm going to do is just clip those little corners off because we don't need them. Very carefully because I don't want to cut anything else off that I do need. Mess up the quilt. So I'm just going to cut all these little corners off now that they've been sewn and mitered there. To this little ear over here, and our last one over here. Now I'm going to go ahead and find that opening. I'm going to turn our, I keep calling it quilts, but really it's our self-binding receiving blanket, and you will see why it's self-binding in a second here, because our back fabric will go around and come around to the front fabric to create a binded look. So here we go. Pop out all our corners. And we're almost done. Woohoo! It really doesn't take long at all once you get used to it. Mitering the corners and measuring up from the center points can come across a little tricky at first when you're not used to doing it. So, all these corners out. But as you can see, that outside fabric comes around as if it were a binding all the way around. Isn't that cute? And then your back side, you just have the solid fabric. Almost done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish poking out these corners and I'm going to iron it so it's nice and flat. I'm going to make sure that it's measured equally all around on all the sides. You can just do it by eye if you want. I like to make sure measure. And then what I'm going to do, because we still have that opening, here's the opening over here. And the opening is between the fabrics here at the bottom. So what we're going to do is go all the way around the quilt, just along this line with a decorative stitch. I do a zigzag so you catch both fabrics, both sides. And I'm going to make sure this is ironed flat so that gets caught and closed up at the same time. We do our decorative stitch going all around that edge. That's what I'm going to go do now. I'm going to iron this, make sure that's down flat at our opening. I'm going to do the decorative stitch, just a zigzag. You can do whatever decorative stitch you want, making sure I go right down the center so I catch both pieces of fabric, and then we'll be done. I'll be back to show you my finished product. I ironed my blanket. I sewed my decorative edge all the way around, although I'm not the straightest, but you can't really tell. And voila, I have a nice soft flannel self-binding receiving blanket. I hope you enjoyed this project, and we'll be back tomorrow with Skully Designs and our 365-day project.